All right. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Juwan Johnson, and thank you for coming to the Six Bridges Book Festival. We're glad you're in this virtual space tonight. You're in for a real treat today. But before I introduce the author, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping things. I want to first invite you to use the chat feature to add questions for our author. Also, use the link in the chat to purchase a copy of the book. I also like to give a special thanks to our sponsors, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. The support of sponsors like them help to make our festival great. And also, you're welcome to donate to keep this wonderful program going as well. Now we're going to move on to the main event. I'm honored tonight to present my friend and brother, Dr. Daniel Black, to you. Dr. Black is an internationally renowned author, author and prize-winning novelist. His works are inspired by African-American life, history, and heritage in the South, encompassing the themes of race, religion, and sexuality. Dr. Black was born in Kansas City, Kansas, but grew up in Arkansas, particularly in Blackwell. His great-grandmother, Stella Swinton, was his childhood caregiver and inspires much of his work. He graduated from Morrilton High School in Morrilton, Arkansas. Currently, he lives in Atlanta. He is a professor of African American Studies and English at his alma mater, Clark Atlanta University, and at Morehouse College, where he has mentored burgeoning writers and scholars since 1993. Now, among his literary works are They Tell Me of a Home, The Sacred Place, Perfect Peace, 12 Gates to the City, The Coming, and Listen to the Lambs, all published by St. Martin's Press. He has been nominated for the Townsend Literary Prize, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Farrell Grumley Literary Prize, the Lambda Literary Award, and the Georgia Author of the Year Prize. In addition, he was awarded the Writers Award for the Middle Atlantic Writers Association. In the words of our colleague and friend, Mr. Griff Stockley, who introduced us in 2007, Dr. Daniel Black is the real deal. But today, we're here to discuss the seventh novel, Don't Cry for Me. It is described by Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and writer Jericho Brown as marrying soliloquy to epistolary, or a sustained view of a man's changed mind. In doing so, we gain a lesson in a rural Black history yet taught in schools. I'll add that this is also about communal transformation. This book is gaining wide readership and recently was selected as Steph Curry's November book for his book club, Literati. Without further ado, let's welcome our friend, brother, scholar, teacher, and preacher sometimes, Dr. Daniel Black.
Thank you, brother, and great Dr. Juwan Johnson. I appreciate you tremendously. That introduction, man, sets me up. I should take you on the road with me, man. I want to start by doing a brief reading of Don't Cry for Me that I think sets the tone for this conversation, and then we'll press on. And to all of those of you who have found it not robbery to share this hour with us, we are eternally grateful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you to Six Bridges. Thank you to all the folks who put this conference together. It's just absolutely crucial and wonderful that we read as much as we can, certainly as a nation, because we're in some trying times. But I think reading can really help save this nation. So I'm going to read a little bit first, and then we'll talk. When in 2013, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I knew what it meant. He'd soon forget what he'd done or said to me over the years. In fact, he'd need my sympathy, perhaps my financial assistance as his memory faded away. For a long time, I had wanted to hash things out, to speak honestly about how we had hurt each other. But Daddy's mind left like a dream at dawn, and now the encounter could happen only in my imagination. So that's where I went. I saw in my mind my father leaning over a legal pad, writing as best he could something very private, very painful that couldn't wait another day. I imagined him ancestral, though still in the flesh, such that he knew and understood everything about me, and I imagined him unashamed. I wondered what he'd say if he could stare into my heart. This book is his response, his desperate plea. My father grew up in a time when black children meant nothing to America. Most of them, including him, didn't have a birth certificate. Their care, their education, their self worth was optional. Whether they lived or died was insignificant to the state. For the most part, their existence centered around work and church. And even the church taught them that they were wretches and sinners undone, black children of Ham who, without a forgiving God, had no hope in this life or the next. Children of my father's generation were taught that dreams were a waste of time, when there was labor to be done, and that wasn't very often. This is the world that shaped my father's consciousness. In his old age, he retired from his job as a mechanic, and the state informed him he needed a birth certificate in order to draw Social Security. He told them he'd never had one. They said, get a birth certificate form and make it up. If you don't know your birthday, hell, choose a day. Any day will do. I was horrified at the arbitrary nature of his black life. Only then did I understand his harsh, insensitive demeanor. In some ways, he envied the life he had provided for his children. He too had wanted knowledge, travel, enlightenment, but such was laughable for a dark black boy in the 1940s. So Daddy dreamed for me. Yet my freedom angered him. It made me question his world, his convictions, his God. After college, I wanted nothing to do with Daddy's idea of manhood. He wanted no parts of my fluidity. We were never reunited in our hearts again. Yet once Alzheimer's took Daddy's mind and softened his boldness, I discovered a man who was more than a field plow. He wanted what I wanted, to mean something to the world, to make a difference in someone's life, to be admired for the man he was. But we never achieved that mutual clarity. Rid of a poor black father's appeal is what any dying might say to his child. More than anything, I want readers to reconsider the capacity of our fathers' hearts. Many of them were handed so little, yet we expected so much. They gave more than they had, but less than we needed. They were burdened with the notion of manhood that destroyed so many sons' lives, but they didn't know another notion to give. In the end, they destroyed their own, too. Mm. But if they'd been allowed to dream, they might have experienced sons who were not carbon copies of themselves. They might have imagined boys in all their glory, dancing before the world without shame. They might have granted a queer son permission and affirmation to be himself, regardless of the world's reaction. They might have known that some spirits come into the world to disrupt normalcy and thereby create space for the despised and the rejected. And they might have understood, finally, that every son is an eternal blessing if they've been allowed to dream.
Powerful. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
that
sir.
Is really creates a space for the first question that I have.
Okay.
But I had to take that in for a moment, you know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Can you speak about, as you talked about, and now that encounter in terms of your father's, the exchange could only happen in your imagination.
Yes.
Can you speak to the power of the imagination in healing ourselves and possibly others?
Absolutely. In fact, I think actually, Juwan, Dr. Johnson, it can only happen in the imagination in many ways. Because see, American racism is so pervasive. It's so evil. It's so bad. It's so ubiquitous that what it would take for this nation to really heal, most people cannot and will not do. And so it will take the imagination. It will take art. It will take the artist to usher us into a healing space. And what the imagination does, it allows you to consider something that's bigger than itself. It allows us to imagine the possibility. It imagines us to conceive of one another as greater than we really are. And then we get invited to be that.
Yes.
You know, and so I thought of my father I thought of what he would be like if he really knew and understood who I was. I thought of my dad if he really conceptualized
Mhm.
um, the complexities of the son he had born. And I believed he would love it if he ever really understood who I was. And
Mhm.
so I began to imagine us actually having that conversation and us even exposing our hearts to each other. But what I also realized is that my father was far more than I knew in terms of who he was. My
Mhm.
father was a very hard man. He was a very harsh man. He was a very stern and a very rigid man coming out of, the rural Black South in the 30s and 40s. But the truth of the matter is that wasn't him. That
Mhm.
was what he became.
Mhm.
So I had to ask myself, who was he as a little boy?
Mhm.
What
Wow.
did he play with? What did he think about? Right?
Mhm.
What did he imagine he could be, but no one ever invited him to be? But
Correct.
see, by the time my father got to me, he had thrown all of those notions away. So I never saw a precocious, curious person in my father. I saw a very conservative, rigid Black man who, quote unquote, don't play.
Yes.
You know. And so in the imagination, I I I was allowed to think of my father as someone who could have loved me if he had known.
Mm. Powerful. In terms of this literary method that you use, the epistolary form,
Yes.
how did that allow more space to get to his heart and your
Absolutely.
own?
Absolutely. Because the epistolary form allows this father's voice to be singular. He is
Mhm.
the only voice in this text. He is the one who speaks. He's center stage. It allows this poor, rejected, Black, seemingly irrelevant, meaningless Black father, for the first time ever in his life, to be center stage and everybody is listening to him.
Wow.
Right? He
Wow.
gets all the authority in this
Mhm.
text. And because he's in that space, he also gets the chance to create himself, to introduce himself to the world. And so that epistolary form allows and invites this father to be unashamed about who he is for the first and only time in his life,
Mm.
because now he gets to speak, and in speaking he gets to create himself.
Wow. Now you also, I also want to ask this in terms of as you were writing, who did you have in mind? Who were you addressing or who are you addressing?
You know, people ask me that often, Dr. Johnson, and the thing I always tell people is I'm always writing to anyone who's willing to read.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, um, but I am writing to all Americans. I'm writing to all Americans
I think we're having some distortion.
of a people of a. Say it again.
So I think we're having some distortion here.
Okay, we had a little distortion. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now you're good. Mm.
Let's see. Okay, you hear me now. Okay, yes. So the question is, what became of a people who, after enslavement, were deemed were deemed insignificant, were deemed unnecessary, right? What do you do with millions of people whose worth you have now erased,
Mhm.
and yet their physical body is present? It is here. They won't leave. You can't make them leave. In fact, you shouldn't make them leave because they built the place. But still, the point is, what do you do with a people you deem irrelevant?
Mhm.
Right? And that's really what happens in this story. This father was deemed irrelevant, but he wanted to birth a son who had value and who had meaning. But he didn't have it himself.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, really the real achievement of this book, if there is one, which I hope there is that a slave births a free man.
Mm. Powerful.
A slave births a free son. But
Mhm.
it's his freedom that scares the slave to death.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because You do something interesting in terms of the genealogy of the biblical characters
Yes.
when you rearrange them.
Yes.
Um, and there's several questions I can ask about that, but I wanted to first just ask, why did you take this approach?
One, because Black folks in the South know the Bible,
Mhm,
right? And we named people out of that Bible in many ways, which I think is problematic, but it's still true. The
mhm,
Bible was the only quote unquote reliable text that many Black people depended upon. We learned to read from the Bible, right? We took the Bible as the word of God. We understood the Bible as giving directions for how to live, etc., right? And the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob story is a fascinating story. It's a story of fathers and sons,
mhm.
right? It is a story of fathers and sons. And these fathers and sons um, literally, um, they the father almost sacrifices his son's life because of what God says to him,
Mhm.
right? Um, and I conceived of this story as a story between fathers and sons, and the difficulty of what some fathers and sons have um, in terms of their emotional connections. And I thought that framing it in this Abraham, Isaac, Jacob story would be a powerful way to help us understand the nuances and the complexities of the father-son relationship.
Mhm.
Of course, in this text, the fathers and sons are distorted because Jacob is the father and
Mhm.
Isaac is the son. Although biblically, Isaac is the father and Jacob is the son. But I
Mhm.
did that because I wanted to show that in Black America, familial relationships were disrupted and turned upside down through a thing
Correct.
called slavery, and that it would take another generation for someone to um, to have the healing power
Mhm.
to set those relationships aright again one day.
Now, are you also interrogating patriarchy with this?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. It's an
And
absolute.
deconstructing it in ways that Bell Hooks mentions that it always betrays Black men.
Yes,
We didn't
yes.
construct that system. It was never designed to work for us. So can you talk about the way that you are interrogating patriarchy
I'm
or
definitely
patriarchal
interrogating.
structure?
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely interrogating patriarchy, and I'm interrogating patriarchy because there are ways that patriarchy has been the destruction not of just the Black community, but of America and of the West in general. This
Absolutely.
notion that men should rule, this notion that God thinks men should rule, this notion that God is a man, right? All of this is about power and control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it demeans, it insults, it belittles women, and it keeps everybody underfoot in terms of in a nation, in a community. And it perpetuates the notion that the only person's liberty to whom we all should be committed is men,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then what patriarchy does is it sets up not just a hierarchical system in terms of gender, it sets up hierarchy as being divine. So then you're going to have a gender hierarchy, but you're going to have a racial hierarchy in a minute. It sets up all hierarchy. So then it's white men,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whose liberty we should be concerned about. So the list goes on and on. So I'm interrogating patriarchy because I'm interrogating the ways in which social hierarchy has been the destruction of the American social order, and that if we could get rid of some of our love of oppression, we could
Mm-hmm.
really begin to establish ourselves as a nation of free people.
Mm-hmm.
But not until we begin to relinquish some of the privileges of oppression.
Okay. And that's what's happening with Jacob, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
he's moving forward, but he's also holding on. But before I go there, we got to go to Blackwell, Arkansas, because
Yes. And hey,
because
everybody in Arkansas, what's up?
we got to go to Blackwell, Arkansas, because we spend a lot of time in this place in terms
That's
of,
right.
and even the imagined versions of it. And I was struck by this resonated with me because Jacob and Isaac find joy in returning. And I wanted to kind of discuss why home is a central theme um, in your work,
Yes, yes.
the
Home is
home
absolutely
place.
yes. Home is absolutely a central theme in my work because home is a theme in Black existence.
Correct.
right? See, the truth of the matter is Black folks in America are not yet sure we're home. Because
Mm.
see, the place never really welcomed us. We had to make a home out of
Yes.
a very tumultuous place. We had to make a home out of a place that said, get the hell out, that said,
Mm.
go back, right? We had to construct home in places, in hostile territory,
Correct.
in very hostile terrain. And that was true, and it continues to be true, right? So,
Mhm.
this notion of where is home? What is home? What does home signify? Is home always full of love? Is home always nurturing, right? Does home always embrace you? Those are questions that are very complicated questions for Black folks in America,
Mm.
right? And I'm certainly one of those people. Though, and that's a tough question also for LGBTQ individuals
Yeah, I was going
because
there next. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. Because fluidity makes even an unsettled home, right,
Hmm.
even more tumultuous. So that then Black folks ask, gay and lesbian children, um, where is your home,
Mm.
right? Because even the precarious home Black people make is often unwelcoming of fluid individuals.
Correct.
Right? So gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, for all practical purposes, have been unhoused, and in fact don't even necessarily. In fact, what's really interesting, I think it's interesting that people think of gay and lesbian people who have not, announced their business to the world as being in the closet.
Hmm.
And I think the closet is an interesting metaphor to use to people who folks don't want in the house, because the closet is in the house.
Is in the house.
It's in the house. It's in the house, brother. It's in the house. And so I'm very, very much concerned about the ways in which we think of gay and lesbian individuals and want to displace them, although it's the displaced doing the displacement,
Mm.
right? Black folks are already displaced. And for Black people, the displaced, to displace their own gay and lesbian children is not only a contradiction in terms, right? But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Correct.
right?
Right.
And so in this book, this very patriarchal Black man gives birth to this wonderfully beautiful, amazing gay son, and he hates it. He
Mm-hmm.
despises it. So
Mm.
interestingly enough, it's so deep. Interestingly enough, Isaac's difference, right? Isaac's difference really is inherited from his own folks. Because Black people, we came here because of difference,
Correct.
right? And so Jacob not wanting a different child, a different kind of child, is a literary irony. I think this is important for us to talk about, though, because um, it's funny how conservative Black people can be when we were the objects of the oppression just a few years ago,
Hmm.
right? Just a few years ago, Black people could not marry legally. But
Correct.
then for any Black person not to fight for LGBTQ rights doesn't make sense to me. Why? Because yesterday you were the object of the oppression.
Hmm.
So today, why wouldn't you be fighting to dismantle any oppression,
Correct.
right?
Right.
So I think that's a funny, 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 funny thing. And so I'm hoping in this book that people will at least reconsider that idea.
Wow. I had to pause on that moment. Because I want to talk about Isaac just a moment, because there's are times where I feel his voice is in the background, but he's also speaking very loud.
Yes.
Um, and he has to leave for many reasons, I think. Can you talk about that? Why he has to go, why he has to free himself from this system to find whatever he conceives freedom to be?
Yes, yes, yes. Because Isaac is a brilliant, is a precocious, is an uh, um, is an intellectually gifted child.
Mhm.
Isaac is also an artist, right? And that's very, very important. Isaac is an artist. And the only way for Isaac's art to bloom, the only way for Isaac's art to work is he must get freed. he must get freed of the bondage of the person who does not understand the capacity of art. And that is his father. His father does not understand the capacity of art. He does not understand the importance of images. He does not know the meaning of symbols and symbolism. He does not understand, right, the invisibility of music, right? He does not get that.
Correct.
And that's who Isaac is. And so if Isaac is going to live, right, it's kind of like when you think of a tree, right? When you think of a tree, in order for that leaf to be free, it has to separate itself from the tree.
Correct.
Right? The tree does not move. The leaf is never still. Right? Now, ironically, one comes from the other. But it is an extension of it. That's, leaves are reaching in every direction.
Correct.
Very much like ideas do. Right? But leaves sometimes are reaching in directions that the trunk of the tree is not trying to go. And so the leaf has to separate itself so that the wind can carry it, right, into the possibilities of tomorrow. Wow. The wind won't move the tree, but it will move the leaf. And so Isaac has to leave in order for Isaac to live the life he was sent to live.
But his father begins his process of freedom.
Yes.
And there was a moment when I was on edge, actually, when he's driving to meet his son and did not complete the journey.
Oh, one of my favorite parts. Oh my gosh.
Can you discuss that? And
yes, I can. And I'm gonna tell you something really funny. I'm gonna have to take 10 seconds and just run across the room and get my computer charger, because I didn't think I'd need it, but I see I'm going to need it.
Okay, we're amongst friends.
Okay, wonderful. I'll discuss that that's probably my favorite part in this book, Juwan.
Okay.
This father gets in his car. He's on his way to see his son in Chicago, and halfway he turns around because he does not imagine that his son will welcome him. Oh, it just ate me up, man. That just killed me because he was on the way. Right. But what really kills me is that Isaac never knew. Right. Which means it's a metaphor that sometimes our parents are trying, but the children never see the full effort. Right. Sometimes a parent really works hard to do better, but children never, ever see the full expanse of what it costs them to do that. Right. And in this case, when he begins to imagine his son's response, he cannot see love. He cannot see embracing. He can't see the possibility that the son will say, "Oh, Dad, oh my God, come in." He thinks his son will say, "I don't want to see you. I'm done with you. I'm through with you." But the truth of the matter is, there are no children who would not welcome their parents' transformation.
Correct.
That's all we've all ever wanted, is for our parents to say, "I love you. And I was thinking about you." But because he cannot imagine it, right, the father turns around. Right. Just devastating. Give me 30 seconds. I'm just grab my
charger. We'll be here. Again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I encourage you to write your questions in the chat. Also, there's a link to where you can purchase books. Check that out. As you can see, this is a wonderful read. We encourage you to definitely get your hands on it, discuss it with your friends, family members, pass the word as we're hearing our brother speak tonight. So again, thank you so much for joining us as we are engaged in this wonderful conversation with Dr. Daniel Black on Don't Cry for Me. Novel.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is so important about that scene is that it shows you how the father's vulnerability is really his greatest fear. What he really is fighting is his own vulnerability. Right? He fears that if he puts his heart on the table, so to speak, his son will reject it.
But that heart has been crushed so many times,
It's true.
even with the loss of his brother,
That's right.
where he is not given the space to grieve.
That's right.
Um, and now he's at a space of dying. And even as I thought about the title and in this statement that we hear later from him, "Don't cry for me," does he even feel that he's worth the tears
Yeah. That's
that
a good question. That's a good question.
often accompany grief?
That's right. And as a poor black boy from rural Arkansas, his self-worth is practically zero.
Hmm.
He gets worth from external sources. He thinks that because he's a man, he has worth. Because God sanctioned men to be the head of the household and all of that. That's where his worth comes from. Not who he is, not anything he's achieved.
Hmm.
It's just his biology, right? But then when his wife walks away from him, when his son leaves him, he is forced to ask the question, who am I?
Hmm.
Why do I exist? What value do I have? And to whom? To who? Where is my life significant?
Yeah.
He's forced to ask that question and he cannot find an answer. And
I,
so he begins to read one day, right?
Mhm.
He begins to read one day, although he's a poor reader, but he discovers the power of reading.
Correct.
He discovers that he can create a whole world in reading. He discovers that he learns things that he never knew before. He gets introduced to ideas that he never considered before. He gets introduced to possibilities that literally awaken curiosity in him,
Hmm.
right? His imagination stirs. And
Yes.
because of this, right? Because of this, he begins to see, oh my God, what have I missed in the world? And the truth of the matter is, he's missed the whole world,
He missed exactly.
right?
Yeah, I couldn't help but as I was reading, and he's becoming, he's gaining consciousness. And the wife, I see her kind of as a prophetic voice.
Yes, yes,
He
yes,
is very much,
yes,
and in his planting seeds along the way that definitely I think take root. But I'm thinking as he's reading, as he's expressing himself, is he thinking, "Wow, I could have done this another way. This could have been different. It didn't have to be this harsh."
it didn't have to be this harsh. Yeah, it didn't have to
And
be this harsh. Yeah, yeah. The truth of the matter, though, is for him, it had to be that harsh because he's
mm,
so limited in his beginning that this is just the nature of his journey.
mhm,
But once he becomes a reader, he does realize and he does see that, oh my God, how have I treated people?
yeah,
Right? Oh my God, what have I done to other people's
mhm,
hearts? You know? And I think what's beautiful is that reading actually critiques him.
absolutely.
And that's one of the roles of reading, of course, to make you see yourself.
Mhm,
And that absolutely positively happens in this case. But by the time he sees himself, his son is grown.
yes,
Right? But transformation is never too late, right?
right.
It's never too late to do better, to be
Mhm,
better, to get better, to love better, to embrace better, to celebrate better. And so on his deathbed, he writes these letters, right?
mhm,
And these letters are really his way of saying, "Hey, son, here's my heart.
mhm,
It's the best thing I have to give you, and it's
mhm,
really all Isaac ever wanted."
yeah. What was the significance of the date span in the letters?
Well, what I wanted to do was to show kind of his his desperation
Mm,
and to show how time is chasing him,
yeah.
right? Because he's on his deathbed, so it's going to be a very limited amount of time, of course, right? And to show also how literally day by day, all he gets is a day.
Mm,
That's all he gets. And so he has to pour his heart out. He has to tell all the truth he has to tell all the truth his energy can muster in a
mhm,
day because he doesn't know, the next day literally is not promised,
correct.
right? And I also wanted to show that sometimes, even at the 11th hour,
Mhm,
the miracle still comes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of the lessons that you like Black families to gain from this, what's one message to Black families that you want?
And also, there are questions in the chat.
I'm going to get
You're
to them.
gathering them? Okay, fine. So ask that last question again, Doug.
I said the lesson to Black families.
Oh,
the
yes.
lessons.
Yes. I got you. I think I'd say two things
Mhm.
primarily. One, parents, do not be afraid of the children you birth. You will not birth yourself. You're not supposed to birth yourself. Your children won't be you. They will not be carbon copies of you. They will not share all your convictions. They won't think what you think, right? They won't have the preferences you have. Your children very often will come to make you reconsider what you think you know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the point of a child is really for a parent to plant this seed and watch it grow, not try to figure out how to control its growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? The second thing I would say is Black families, we need to have more intimate conversations. It's uncomfortable, it's uneasy, it's vulnerable, it makes folks nervous, and without them, we are dying.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have those hard conversations about daddy, how you treated me, mama, how you treated me. We need to have those we have got to have the conversations about what we feel, not just facts about what we feel. My folks didn't ever have them. We didn't have them. And we weren't going to have them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I knew we weren't going to have them. But I knew that I had to somehow express them someplace.
Correct.
So writing became the means and the medium by which I began to express and to play with my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two things I would say primarily.
Thank you for that. Before I get to the questions, I have about 3 from the audience. What would you say to Black gay men? What is your message to Black gay men from this?
I would say, number one, you are not simply the amalgamation of who and what your parents are. Do not limit yourself to being just who and what your parents are. Don't limit your worth to what your people see. That is an error. You are worth more than what the eye can behold. Mm-hmm. Right? And do not understand sexuality in the context of religion. Religion does no help when one is trying to construct identity. Mm-hmm. Right? Who you are and what you are, right, is a matter of God's imagination and your creative power. You get to create yourself. Make yourself out of what you want, but also do not define the totality of yourself as a result of your sexual appetite. Correct. Being gay is the totality of being gay is not who you sleep with.
Correct.
Right. I think that is absolutely elementary. I think that's simple. I think that's silly. And I think it absolutely shaves away the beauty and the nuances of a fluid life and a fluid lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A question from Charles Taylor. Can you explain this concept of privileges of oppression?
Yes.
For the oppressed or for the oppressor or the oppressed?
Yes. Every oppression carries privilege. That's why people do it. Racism absolutely has its privileges. Well, of course, wealthy. Right? That's literally how America became wealthy, because of the privileges of racism, that someone else gets to work, or is forced to work for someone else for free. Well, somebody got really rich. Lots of people got really rich. Gender oppression. The oppression of gender means men get lots of free service. Mm-hmm. Right? So there are privileges to every oppression. The problem is that it destroys all of us spiritually, though, and morally. That's the issue. But by the time we discover that, folks are already on the decline. Mm-hmm. Right? Because in order to benefit from the privileges of oppression, you have to destroy someone else. Correct. See? And part of the problem with oppression is everybody is waiting on their turn. Mm. See, even those of us who were once oppressed, if we're not careful, we're waiting for our turn to be the oppressor,
Mm,
right? But that's not freedom. Freedom is not when do I get to be in power? When do I get to oppress other people? That's not freedom.
mhm,
Freedom is I want to grow and mature out of the desire to oppress anybody. I don't need a turn. No
mhm.
thank you.
And Jacob is experiencing this transformation.
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. He is experiencing this transformation. It's difficult for him because he's doing it alone. He doesn't have a
Mhm.
teacher. He doesn't have other students in the classroom. He's going through this intellectual transformation alone, but he is absolutely positively learning.
Yeah.
He's learning and he's transforming. He doesn't get all the way there,
Mhm.
right? But he absolutely does move on the spectrum.
Yeah. And I think you're pointing towards community being central, being key to this journey, to this transformation that he has. He's isolated. Um, but his son is also isolated.
Right, right. That's right. That's right. Both father and son are isolated. The irony. In other words, the son is becoming the father in so many ways,
Mhm.
which is what he vowed he would never do. But
Correct.
isn't it true? I mean, for you too, Dr. Johnson, we look up and we'll do things and say things, be like, "Oh, I'm just like my mama.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, I'm just like my dad." It happens all the time.
Either way, on
Either
both
way,
sides.
absolutely.
And Shirley has a question, it kind of relates to what we're saying. Have you taken that's the story that further step to where Isaac reads the letter?
Yes, I have, Shirley. I will tell you, I have. I have. And in fact, and I'll just tell everyone, I have written now the sequel,
Mm,
which is Isaac writing back to his father. Right?
mhm,
I'm using the same epistolary form. Isaac writes letters. He answers the letters, and he does it in the epistolary form. And he answers the letters when his father is ancestral. He
mm.
answers them a few days after he buries his daddy. And that's when he gets the letters, right? I won't tell you how he gets the letters. You'll learn all of that. But he does, and Isaac's response will just make you weep.
Let me see if I have another question here. All right. Feel free to keep them coming, you all. Let's see here. Ask that.
I'll say one other thing while you're looking
Sure.
that's just on my mind to speak, and that
Hmm.
is, um, this book is about a man who's about to step into eternity. This book is
Hmm.
about a man who's on his deathbed, who's about to become ancestral. And the irony is that he has no notion whatsoever what his son feels about him. It's
Mm,
so funny that a father can live a whole lifetime and have no idea whatsoever what my son thinks about me because he's too scared to know.
correct.
He's too afraid to know. He knows he wounded him. But what's funny is he didn't wound him because he hated him.
Mm,
He wounded him because he believed he was preparing him for manhood. He believed he was preparing
yeah.
him for a world that would absolutely challenge his masculinity as a black man. And he's right.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Yes.
very complicated. He is right. And we're going to see in the sequel how Isaac's manhood absolutely is challenged,
Mm,
right? We're going to see that. And we're going to see the ways in which Isaac thanks him, right, for preparing him for those challenges.
mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you talked a bit about earlier, and even alludes to this at the end. I mean, statements such as, the father and the son is the heel of the father.
Right, right.
Is that too much? Is that too weighty of an emotional responsibility to be placed on the son, who is also grappling with his um, the trauma, the fears? Should that emotional labor be placed on him?
I don't know if it's a question of should, but I think every son carries the weight of his father's story.
Hmm.
I think every son carries that. Whether we
Hmm.
want it, we don't, I think we inherit it.
But that part of, in terms of the healing that is to take place.
Well, I think I
Yeah.
think if a son is going to be healed, in 90% of instances, if a son's going to be healed, he's going to have to do it himself
Hmm.
because most of us outgrow our fathers.
Correct.
And that level of growth, but that level of growth often is
Mhm.
because of our fathers. See,
Correct.
some of us went to college, our fathers didn't, but some of us went to college on our father's money.
Yes.
So if that money gave you that insight, don't you owe some of that insight back?
Mhm. Correct.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I think it's simply the way of humanity. I think our
Mhm.
parents rear us, and I think we grow down the road. And I think we have to look back at some point and realize that part of our growth it comes from the people who we outgrew.
Mhm. You dedicate this book to Ernest Gaines,
Yeah.
who you mentioned started the conversation.
Uh huh.
What can you speak to that, and
Yes, Ernest Gaines is one of my favorite.
what you're adding to that conversation based on the foundation that he has laid?
Yes, because what I think Ernest Gaines does is suggest that fathers and sons need to be in conversation again,
Mhm.
right? The part I'm adding is saying that not only do father and sons need to be in conversation again, but fathers and sons need to physically touch.
Mhm.
And fathers and sons need to tell each other what we think, what we feel, how we hurt. And we need to do that face to face, if at all humanly possible. That is the healing and that is the power, and nothing else will substitute for it.
Mm. Powerful. We have another question. What are some of the books that influence you the most? And we've talked about Gaines as a young adult, or ones that you admired a lot.
Oh, wow. The Fire Next Time,
Mhm.
James Baldwin. Um, Maya Angelou uh,
Mhm.
uh, um, was Maya Angelou's autobiography. Um, Help me out, Juwan.
Oh, I know why the cage bird
I Know
sing.
Why the Caged Bird Sings. Absolutely. I was a huge fan of Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon.
Mhm.
Um, and quite frankly, lots of stories from the Bible because I grew up with Christian folks, and there are biblical stories that were told to me over and over and over and over and over again, right? Which is why I knew the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob story, etc. So I was always a reader. So there are tons and tons and tons of stories. I'm a big Marilyn Robinson fan. I'm a huge Marilyn Robinson fan.
Mhm.
I like Marilyn Robinson very, very, very much. I'm a Jasmine Ward fan.
Mhm.
Um, I love Edwige Danticat.
Mhm.
I love Kaise Lehman.
Mhm.
He has an autobiography, Heavy, that I think is just absolutely magnificent. So those are some of the ones. Yeah. Oh my God, is it 5:50?
Yes, we're almost
I
there.
was like, I'm thinking it's like maybe 5:30. Gosh.
No, this time has gone
Wow.
by quite fast. Yeah, thanks for that question. Let me see if I have anything else here. If not, I'll move on to another one of mine. In the Black literary landscape, and you just listed this roster of wonderful writers who are in many ways transforming us. Um, what are some of in the most recent book you've read? What is your overall idea as you have been writing for a long time? As you see this burgeoning new
Right.
artist of Black authors,
Right.
what does this make you feel? What is your intellectually? What do you think about it?
I'm very encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've gotten so many more um, Black writers, Asian writers, Native American writers.
Mhm.
I don't use the phrase of color. I
Yes.
despise that
Mm.
phrase. Right? So I don't want to say writers of color because
No,
writers of color, you never say what color they are.
correct.
Right? Writers of color really means they just ain't white,
Mhm, mhm,
right? Which is not an identifier. But anyway, um, I'm extremely encouraged by new writers. In fact, I love Sherman Alexie. Um, I love, oh my God, Ocean Vong. I love him.
mhm,
Um, there are lots of new writers out today that are they're really doing some amazing magical work. And so I'm very encouraged about the landscape. 50 years ago it looked very, very white. Now it looks very, very shaded. And I'm
Mhm.
very, very happy about that. I think there are brilliant writers on the scene now who 50 years ago just never would have made it, including myself.
Yeah. I think this work that you produced is timely as so many hearts are growing calloused. And as we see so much happening on the social, political, and cultural landscape.
Right.
Um, and I'm always leaning into the prophetic aspect of literature, particularly Black literature. Um, as a artist, as a writer, what is your hope? What are you seeing for the present time as you analyze, as you think, as you create, and you're influenced by all that is external? What's in your heart? What's the burning message? Um, Prophesy to us.
The truth of the matter is, I've thought about this question quite often and quite regularly. And I think the thing that's in my heart most immediately is I want people to begin to read outside of themselves,
Mm,
right? I want I want to believe that in the future, Black writers will be read by white people as much as they're read by Black people. That men read women's literature, that
mhm,
heterosexuals read gay novels.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? I want us to really get out of this notion of reading so insularly and reading so narrowly, because then all we're doing is reading ourselves and reading our own stories over and over and over. Really, some of our liberty is in other people's stories,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
And the only way we'll know it is to actually take that journey with someone else. Because the truth of the matter is, all of us as human beings are searching for the same thing: liberty, self worth, validation, joy, happiness, right? And the belief that we are preferred by God.
Mhm,
Everybody wants it. It's the same goal everywhere.
mhm,
And I want us to become readers of freedom's story, if you will.
mhm,
But
mhm.
the only way to get that is to read some stories that we didn't write.
Correct. That's that's profound. We have several congratulatory thank yous and remarks.
Oh,
And Mary Givens wrote Sankofa. You brought forth
okay.
that
Yes.
principle.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, Kevin, what's up, man? I know Kevin Brockmeyer. Yes, 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 yes. Um, I'm so glad to be here. Yes, yes, yes. And someone asked too, I think Mary Givens asked if I would entertain this book being a movie. And not
Oh,
only would I
yes.
entertain it, but I've actually been approached already.
Hmm.
And so we'll see what happens. But I think it would make a powerful movie.
I think it will. Absolutely. What would you like to see if that is to occur in terms of?
Yolanda Payne, what's up, girl? How are you? What would I like to see? I think more than anything, I would love, 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 love to see Jacob's story, and I would love to see this landscape in Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
right? This beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscape, and the ways in which this amazing man comes and is groomed up out of that landscape, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things I would love to see in a movie. The other thing I would love to see is him physically writing,
Mm.
right? We very seldom see in public spaces images of Black men physically writing.
That's powerful. That's true.
And I think that would be very beautiful. I would love to actually see his desperate penmanship
Yeah.
pouring from the pen.
What do you think that imagery will do?
I think that imagery would absolutely make clear to men in general that if you have not gotten right with your children, nothing else will matter one day.
Mm.
The day will come where nothing else will matter to you.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
think that's the point of this book. I don't care what you have. I don't care who you are, right? I don't care what you think you believe. I don't care how grandiose you might perceive yourself. The day will come where the only thing that will matter is who will speak your name when you need.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As
Yeah.
we wind down our last 5 minutes here. Let me see if I, oh, that was just a thank you from Felicia Hunter.
Hey, Felicia.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, Felicia. Thank you, Brian, as well. Brian Fuller, thank you for joining us.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. And thanks to all of you. Seriously, this I take moments like this very, very, very seriously because the only point, really, y'all, of education is to transform the world. The point of education is to move the human being beyond our innate capacity to abuse,
Mm,
to get us past our innate thrust for violence. See,
mhm,
the point of knowledge is to groom us and to teach us that there's a way to coexist that
mhm,
would absolutely benefit all of our life force if we
mhm.
would stop and take the time to do it. Education is supposed to say, think beyond your own preferences,
Mhm.
consider something greater than just you, right? Pray about the notion, right? Weigh in your head the idea that
Yes.
there might be something greater than what you like that
Mm,
would do all of us some good,
mhm,
right? And I think that unless and until we do that, we've not really done education. But moments like this,
mhm.
in a literary form, allow all of us to come together and say, yes, 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 we are bigger than we are manifesting right now. We are greater than we are demonstrating. Our spirits are bigger than
Yes.
than our appetite for money and for power, right?
Mm.
So I just want to thank all of you for being here and for allowing us to grow together.
And thank you, our friend, our brother, our preacher, our teacher, our father, to many as you are,
Yes, sir.
for
Yes, sir.
this beautiful offering that I believe is so timely. And I
Yes,
believe as you all get the book, okay, you
that's
can
right.
also visit Pyramid Art and Books. You can get it there. You can, there's a link online, but however you choose to get your copy, share with friends. Hey, Christmas is coming up. You can pass it along as a gift. I think it's a wonderful gift that will transform generations. And so again, thank you all so much for being a part of this transformational moment. Enjoy the rest of the week. Have a safe night and be blessed.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all.